everyone, it's Sarah Shaddy. Welcome to Caregiver Crossing the Video series. Today we are joined by Beth Edwards. She's an account manager with Select Home Health Services. We're super excited to have her, but before we talk to Beth, we're going to have a special introduction to this video by the two young gentlemen behind her in her beautiful backyard. Take it away, boys.
Well, first of all, someone dressed for Thanksgiving, not the luau.
He
got a bit of the wrong message, but we typed down some jokes for you guys that we found and made up. So, what do you get when you cross a hula hoop and a boxer?
A hula hoop and a boxer. What do you get?
Hawaiian punch.
What do you? Where does the mermaid sleep?
Where does the mermaid sleep?
On a water bed.
What's the scariest day on the Hawaiian calendar?
The scariest day on the Hawaiian calendar? What is it?
Yep. Halloween.
Halloween.
Thank you, guys. Oh, we didn't get the big finisher.
There's a finisher.
We forgot to do our introduction, which is the Hawaiian word for joy is actually hau'uli. Hau'uli.
Hau'uli, yes.
Yeah. All right. And our finisher. What do you call a Hawaiian murder mystery?
A Hawaiian murder mystery. What is it?
A whodunit.
Wonderful. Yay. Thanks, guys. Thank you, boys. Yes, that was perfect. Oh, and I love that they made it all Hawaiian theme for the Huli project. So cool. Thanks to your boys. What are their names?
The taller one is Blake and the shorter one is Ben.
Oh, wonderful. Are they liking being home or are they ready to go back to school?
A little bit of both, I think.
A little bit of both.
Well, they like to sleep on schedule, but they're ready to be back with their friends and some structure, I think.
Yeah, I think I keep hearing from a lot of families that mornings are actually the favorite part of the day now because they're not as rushed and we can ease into our days. I think that's been the silver lining in this lockdown right now. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree, yes. They're much more calm and less chaotic at our house.
Yes, absolutely. I have one 5-year-old and our mornings have gone from hectic to really pleasant. It's now the bedtime but that's a different story.
Yeah, there is no bedtime now.
There's no bedtime. Well, Beth, tell us about what you do. I know you're with Select Home Health Services, it's an independent company. It's locally owned in Indianapolis. But tell us more about what the company does and what you do. And that we'll then talk about some really important things that I think will be really helpful for our caregivers that are listening.
Yes, so Select Home Health is locally owned and operated. We started about 9 years ago, and we're owned by 3 clinicians. One is a registered nurse, one's a physical therapist, and the other is an occupational therapist. And the 3 of those clinicians all worked as directors of nursing or rehab in their respective area. And about 9 years ago, they decided to get together and create Select Home Health with a rehab mentality. So they did that because Tim's dad, Tim is one of our majority owners, he watched his parents use home health and realized it wasn't a rehab model that these companies were coming in. The nurse would come in and do the nurse thing, and then the therapist would come in and do the therapy thing, and none of them talked. And more importantly, they didn't really include the doctor and the caregivers in that treatment plan. They just sort of stayed in their silo. So they decided we can do this better. We can do this locally, not some franchise. And so they got together and every night after work started writing the policies and procedures in Tim's garage. So we started in a garage about 9 years ago. And then now we have 3 locations throughout Indiana. Our first is in Westfield. Our second location is in South Indianapolis, and we just opened a 3rd location in Bloomington in March. So, we all come with just that tight-knit mentality. All of our clinicians that have joined our company have been those who have worked with or known people with like mentalities. So everything is very person-centered, team collaboration, and we actually meet as a team every single week to make sure that we're talking about every patient on our caseload and how we're best supporting that patient and their needs.
I love that. And communication was, you know, the part that kind of pivotal puzzle piece. Communication, and then, like you said, involving the family caregiver or caregivers into that conversation is so important.
Yeah, I mean, they saw from the rehab side that you can't succeed without all of those pieces. So I also come from a rehab background. I had 15 years experience in acute rehab. And so, you know, that drove my passion. I say that I dated Select for 5 years before I joined the company, because when I did some discharge planning and case management, they were one of my go-tos because of that focus. So when they called and said, hey, we are growing and we have a position, it was obviously a no-brainer for me to say, yes, sign me up.
So yeah, you do have that really extensive rehab experience. And I know that you can talk a lot about what probably caregivers are really struggling with right now, which is routine, schedule, especially when, you know, some of the services like Joy's House that they may be dependent on have dropped out just because we can't be open right now due to the pandemic. So talk a little bit about both creating a routine or loose schedule with perhaps a loved one that does have a life-altering diagnosis like Alzheimer's, like dementia, like TBI, and then also how to maintain well-being during this time.
Absolutely. And it is so important right now to maintain well-being, especially when we're all out of our norm. All of us, whether we have some sort of disease like Alzheimer's or dementia or not, all of us can decline in a way when we are out of our routine. So maintaining that well-being, maintaining that routine is very, very important right now. And the things that I talk about can actually work towards a multitude of caregivers and a multitude of situations. You know, I know that there are different types of caregivers caring for their loved ones right now. There's a spouse caring for a spouse. There is, you know, a senior, him or herself, whether it's a child or a family member that is also caring for another senior. And then you also have the generation sandwich, where you have an adult child that is helping to care for a loved one, whether it be a parent or another family member, and also maintain a younger family. So in the talk, I'm going to try to include a lot of solutions for all of those situations. Creating a schedule and a new routine is going to be so key right now. And you can do that in a lot of ways. The biggest thing to watch for in the unstructured time can create boredom. And that boredom tends to be the key that leads to all these declines that we see. Increased anxiety, increased stress. And when you have those increased anxieties and stress, that's what's going to lead to the unhealthy patterns of coping, whether it be more sleeping, unexpected or uncharacteristic mood changes or irritability, eating out of normal patterns or not eating out of normal patterns. So this is a huge reason why getting on a schedule and finding a routine is going to be big. I always encourage people, when you are creating a schedule, even write it down. You know, start with a blank piece of paper, and you can start it just by very simple morning, afternoon, evening. Or if you need a little bit more structure, you can add specific times. Block it by hours or half hours, whatever is going to work for you. I always tell people, it is not a perfect system. Don't put pressure on yourself to make it perfect right away. It is trial and error. And if you're trying it, you're succeeding. And give yourself the forgiveness to fail on some of your routines and some of your schedules. Don't feel that you have to be rigid. It's not a failure if you don't meet a time specific on your schedule. So it is okay to flex, and it is okay for something not to happen even though it was scheduled. So give yourself that leniency and that forgiveness. But start with a list, and a written list is very, very helpful. Because when you are coming up with a new routine, if you're not writing it down or you're not going on some predetermined choices, decision fatigue is a real thing. It is a factual diagnosis that just by generating new ideas is taxing on your mind, which is taxing on your body. So people can actually become more fatigued and appear more weak or more confused just by making decisions they've never had to make before. And that's part of being out of routine. So if caregivers are seeing a decline in their loved ones, it may actually be from some of this decision fatigue of being out of a routine. Mm-hmm. And so by adding in some structure, you may see some of that start to change and improve. Mm-hmm. When you are creating a schedule or a routine, start with those basic activities that need to happen. So meal times, hygiene times, appointments, those things that are already should be part of your day, start with those when you're plugging those into a schedule. And once you have those basics, then start to add in the extras, physical activity, cognitive activity, those things that can help supplement and make your day a little more full. I have some really fun ideas for those that are struggling to come up with what do we do. So I had actually, this is something that I'm very passionate about, brain fitness and brain activities. So I had actually created for a talk about a year ago, brain fit activities. So these are fun ways that you can, whether you are the generation sandwich and you're trying to involve a senior and young children with age.
Yeah, a lot of caregivers are in that intergenerational, and that is a struggle to find those activities that appeal to both, breads of the sandwich.
Yep. So some really fun ways to get that is to have the family create a family tree. Start with that loved one with Alzheimer's and with dementia. Use that reminiscence therapy for them to generate all of the information. And then the younger generation can actually craft this into something, either a physical paper tree, they can go through old pictures and they can find those pictures and create it on even the kitchen table of creating that family tree. It's educational for the younger generation to really know where they come from and their history, and they find so much joy from it just from doing that activity. So definitely creating a family tree is fun. Doing a spelling bee. Who doesn't need to keep up on their spelling, especially now with all the auto-predict features we have for the younger generation that don't need to learn how to spell.
Yep.
Doing a jigsaw puzzle or playing a card game or a brand new game. The older generation can teach the younger generation a new game, and then vice versa. It is great brain activity for all of us to do something a little bit out of our norm. But just be aware when you have those periods that you're adding in something that is outside of someone's norm, expect a little bit of that brain fatigue. So when you're making a schedule, try to butt up one of those brain fatiguing activities with something that's a lot less taxing and a lot more rote or norm. So if you are going to add in, let's say, learning a new game, it's going to be tiring. So either adding in a nap after that or adding in hygiene, something that is more routine and basic, that doesn't take a lot of new brain power.
I think that's such a good point, because I think maybe right now we're all looking for something to constantly stimulate, because we're just wanting to fill the day. But absolutely, like you said, if you have something that's stimulating, put it next to something that's very comforting. And two, I think, you know, the weather right now, it can be rainy one day or beautiful and sunny like it is today. And like you said, creating that flexibility so that if it is a gorgeous day, it's okay to, you know, put away the overstimulating activity and just go on a walk and enjoy nature for that day, because that activity can wait till tomorrow when it's pouring rain. You know, we know these spring days can be so unpredictable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you bring up the outdoors, because when I was doing a lot of research, I love research and I love facts. And so I found out that forest bathing is truly a studied thing to help with all of our mood and our well-being. And it actually helps decrease chronic diseases, believe it or not, when you're exposing yourself to what they call forest bathing. And that's being outside and taking in all the nutrients from the environment, whether it be the vitamin D from the sun, whether it be the oxygen from the trees and things like that.
I love it. Beth, do you have any just kind of final tips for our caregivers that are listening, just to kind of get through hopefully what is the tail end, but you know, everything's uncertain and we're not sure what the future holds, but just a final tip as we wrap up the video?
Absolutely. I mean, use your resources. So a lot of people are trying to do this on their own right now, and there are ways to get that respite from qualified healthcare providers that can give you that respite and still keep you and your family safe. The companies like Select Home Health, we have the medical and the non-medical caregiver services. So from that medical standpoint, with a doctor's order, Medicare covers 100%. You never see a bill from us. That in-home physical therapy, that in-home nursing care, in-home speech therapy, that stimulation that you're seeing in a time of a decline. The doctor can order that and Medicare can cover it. And what we do, because we are trained in infection control, we have, knock on wood, been COVID-free in our company. And so we've been practicing infection control from the beginning of March, wearing masks for every single visit. And all the studies are showing that that is actually keeping a less than 5% rate of someone contracting COVID-19 through those services. So it is still safe. We do that on a limited basis and case by case. So that is an option to get some in-home physical therapy. In-home speech therapy helps with a lot of that preventing cognitive decline. Our therapists do dementia staging, and they do a lot of preventative measures to help people, especially during this time. And then caregiver respite and caregiver health is obviously such a dire need. And so our non-medical company operates under the same infection control under our director of nursing, who was in a nursing facility during H1N1, so she understands the need to be on top of infection control. But those caregivers can still come into the home on a 1-hour basis, a 24-hour basis, however much someone needs. It can be covered under a long-term care insurance policy. It can be private pay. It's all by the hour. It doesn't change based on how much work the caregiver needs to do. So there are some options for people to still have that stimulation, and they don't have to do it by themselves.
Like you said, right now, just to maintain that well-being, that caregiver support, and just to depend on the resources that are around you. Beth, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to your boys for all the hauli joy that they spread at the beginning of the video.
Thank you. And I can end with a little visit from my dog, Rex, and one more joke. Rex, come here. Come here, buddy. Come here. Come up here and say hi. Come here. Come on. Yay!
Yay,
Rex! He is a 95-pound yellow lab, and he is my baby.
Your big 95-pound baby.
He absolutely is, yes. And then I have one joke to share. So, why didn't anyone want to play with the crab?
Why didn't anybody want to play with the crab?
He was a little bit shellfish.
Oh. Perfect ending right there. Thank you so much, Beth. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
You
Take care.
too.
Bye.